Thank you. Good afternoon or morning or evening, whatever you are. Set up me slideshow. So my paper, which is on the website to read, is about baptism in the metaverse. Is it a sacrament or sacrilegious? And in my short time of presentation, we'll cover an introduction, a brief overview of baptism, VR Church, which is where it happens, who is baptized. There are some secondary questions around virtual water or self-baptism that I cover briefly in the paper, some conflicts that come out from a ritual transfer theory, and then a brief conclusion. The commission of Jesus was to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Although the original method was immersion, modes have changed over time. Some churches moving from immersion to aspersion or effusion, but the common denominator has always been the presence of the person. Presence of the person and the water. So my paper builds on John Paul Orsino's conclusion that virtual baptism is a valid form of baptism, arguing that both the avatar and person are baptized, identical to onsite, where the physical body and the person are baptized. It is written from a Baptist perspective, where baptism by immersion would be the norm and is actually a requirement for a Baptist minister. VR baptism would not satisfy those requirements, and someone who's been baptized in VR would not be able to become a Baptist minister in the Baptist Union of Great Britain. So when we think about baptism, Karl Barth writes that participating in baptism is the representation of a person's renewal by the means of the power of the Holy Spirit in the death and resurrection of Jesus, and represents their association with Jesus and fellowship with the church. Although different terminology is used to describe baptismal events like signs or sacraments or even pictures, I've used in my paper the term ritual, defined by Christopher Helland as a purposeful engagement with the sacred, and consists of two parts: what ritual is and what it does. And of course, there is no perfect definition. What the ritual does is allows the believer to be part of both church and Christ's fellowship. But it's important that the ritual is completed in the presence of the community and for the community. It's not just a witness or a community requirement like circumcision in the Old Testament, but an expression of unity with the wider church and beyond denominational barriers. However, baptism has moved from being a responsive event in cold, living water to an organised service with preparation classes, purpose-built baptistries with warm water, and now in VR with avatars. And when we talk about the metaverse and the various platforms within it, there's really three main methods of attending a church service. On the left, we have what I've called stream, where the VR service is streamed from a church's online campus, like when I go to with Lakeland Community Church. They have it in the building and it's streamed to the room or the church building in VR, similar to the setup Alina spoke about yesterday. The middle one is sort of a hybrid one where someone like Cornerstone is an extension of their online campus, but the sermon is delivered by the minister in his representation as an avatar. And then the last one is VR Church or virtual reality church, where there is no on-site campus. It's all in the metaverse. Although they use different platforms, the main one is AltSpace VR. But there are other ones like VR Chat, Rust, Rec Room, Horizons World, and they are being different ones created all the time. My paper focuses predominantly on AltSpace VR World, which you can access through a headset or you can use your computer. Obviously, you get a better environment if you go through a headset. And people attend as their avatar, which is a visual representation, I'd argue, of a real person. It's me when I'm there who controls my avatar. It can't exist without the embodied person operating it. When my avatar speaks, it is me speaking. It's the actual human. And when I stop or I go and have a cup of tea or something, then my avatar leaves or the application ceases to exist. So what does baptism look like in virtualities? I've just got a short clip to show you so we can get an understanding of what it's about.
As we come into the water, you express your desire to be baptized. And you want everyone to know about your faith in God. I baptize you, Daisy Petals, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So Daisy, just as Jesus rose from the grave, I want you to come out of the water to symbolize this new life. Here we go, this way.
So that sort of gives you an idea what VR baptism is all about, what happens in VR church. And so in my paper, I looked at what happens when we transfer something that is offline or ritual to an online ritual. And the University of Heidelberg developed the ritual transfer theory, which considers the effect on the initial ritual when there are changes to the context of the ritual or the ritual itself. And their research says the outcome is either a small modification, which does not affect the identity, or a transformation, which challenges the ritual's identity, which for baptism, it could be argued, provides challenges for the participants' spiritual life. And then within that, I looked at Nadja Miczek's, I probably pronounced it wrong, model. And they say when the offline ritual is transferred online through the medium of the internet, it highlights that it involves a transfer between different realities from physical to virtual. And this changing process has three heuristics components of transformation, invention, and exclusion. And my paper focuses on just one of those components, which is described as the process of elimination of something already observed in the established in the observed context. So the main elimination in VR is the candidate is not physically baptized. And as Christopher Helen asked, is the exclusion of a real body too much of a changed? So we think about who is baptized, and that's the main concept that the paper addresses. If it is the person represented by the avatar, then it would be a sacred ritual and identical to onsite, where the person is represented by their physical body. If we say it's just the avatar that is baptized, then is it any different from a television cartoon program or another game in the metaverse? Of course, there are over 130 different understandings of human ontology, but for evangelical scholars, the most common view is the person consists of a visible part, the physical body, and an invisible part, the soul, united in life, but separated at death. Which then raises the question in baptism, is the body an important part, or is it just a vehicle used by the soul to follow Jesus' command? But what distinguishes a person as different? And of course, as I said, there's many ontological answers or suggestions or research out there. But Dr. Paula Gooder, she speaks about the soul is the unique core that makes a person truly human. And she uses this word meanness to describe the real essence of a person. It's something different, the meanness of me. And Gooder states that this meanness of me can only be fully realized in a relationship with God, as the soul describes not only the living person, but their identity beyond the grave and for eternity. Martin Heidegger uses similar terminology describing the soul as thatness or whatness or I, myselfness of being human. And Heidegger addresses the question of the sense of being, using this word dasein as a philosophical expression for what is distinctive of humanity. Dasein exists, only being lived by humans as their way of life. But this manner of life must embody some understanding of being, otherwise they would not be human. This invisible part remains perceptual, whether that's described as the meanness, a soul, or dasein, that who is what maintains itself in the changes for its modes of behavior. And then the theologian Karl Barth, understanding the body is twofold. The visible body represents the objective aspect of human nature, and the invisible soul represents the subjective life of a material organism. If you follow Barth's argument, the human body executes the decisions of the soul. Therefore, if the soul desires to be baptized, the body is the vehicle for achieving that. Similarly, if the soul is happy, then this could be represented by a smile on the physical body. The outer replicates the inner meanness. But yet we could argue that the concept of being has been changed with the advent of the digital, which has produced, we could argue, a new type of self, described perhaps as Jane Guckenbach and Jonathan Boone describe as this hyper-personal self, where the internet permits the person to create their online personality in a different context from their real identity, or to construct something in between a mixture of genuine and imagined self. When you create your avatar, you can create one that looks like you can create one that's differently from you. And in one sense, the internet is a sphere where, although the body becomes secondary, the soul is free to engage. The person, though, remains embodied, but this embodiment changes the way people experience the world. And baptism in VR is a new method for experiencing the ritual. But with any transfer of a ritual to a new medium, there is conflict. Even with baptism, we've gone from cold water to warm water now in churches. There's conflict because it's not exactly as it was. And the source of the conflict perhaps needs to be identified. And yet, baptism itself has caused conflicts. The Baptist had some people say the Baptists have exaggerated the importance of water baptism when Jesus is actually referring to baptism by the Holy Spirit. Or the Baptists focus on this ritual for safeguarding of personal faith, and it alienated them from other denominations. But perhaps we'd argue the real potential is whether a real person is baptized. And people say what they believe they are because they're there. It's an immersive part of the ritual. And Anthony Sparado states the avatar is not a different person, but the person living in a different anthropological space. VR is not a different time and space that humans we teleport into. Our physical bodies remain in the area in the real world. But there are those who would say that perhaps the real church is the only option. Physical on-site church is the thing where people gather in real time and space as real people. And I would argue that this restricts an omnipotent and an omnipresent God if he cannot be present in the metaverse. If God is present through the Spirit at on-site baptism, then the same Spirit must be present at a virtual one. It was God who created the universe, and unless his power is restricted, then surely he must be present in the metaverse, as it is a time and space created by him. A person who is baptized as a teenager will have a different body as they get older. They may have cosmetic surgery. They may lose a limb. They will age. Does that mean then they should be rebaptized? I would argue not. Their body has changed, but their meanness, their soul has remained constant throughout. Therefore, if the physical body is a secondary consideration for on-site, then there should be no difference between on-site and VR baptism. Baptism and the church have changed since the early church. But embracing the digital provides new opportunities to engage, especially in the context of VR. Further, the church won't be replaced by technology, but we need to embrace these new questions of being present, but also absence, as we have discussed throughout the day, and embrace these new methods of the digital revolution. The main focal point of my paper that I've argued is the soul, the individual meanness of a human being is the part that is baptized, whether it's as an avatar or a physical body. Both are just the vehicle the soul uses to fulfill this ritual. Thank you.